The latest Shimano XTR group set and transmission represents the absolute pinnacle of design right now. It's a phenomenal setup with so much tech. But ever since I made the video over on GMBN Tech last year all about it, I've been thinking we needed to do something else just to show how relevant this is. So we teamed up with Shimano to get a brand new XTR group set and spoke to our friends at Mountain Mania Cycles to get hold of a very special retro bike. For this retro versus modern video, I've managed to track down a very special bike, and it has an almost completely unridden and completely original XTR M900 group set on it. This is a Trek Y33. Firstly, I must say a huge thank you to Jamie Lynn from Mountain Mania Cycles for kindly lending me this bike. The Trek Y33 was released in 1994, and it's got some serious tech on it, especially for a bike of its age. Up front, the front triangle, if you can call it that, is made from a monocoque carbon fibre construction. In particular, it's using Trek's famous OCLV, which stands for Optimum Compaction Low Void. Now, this front triangle is mated to a 6061 aluminium rear end via a single unified pivot. Now, the thing with a unified design is it effectively puts the bottom bracket on the back of the bike. So your chain length does not change whatever happens, so it's going to pedal exceptionally well. But one of the downsides is it has a very accentuated effect on the suspension. The bike I'm using for the modern XTR approach is an Orbea Rayon, which hails from Basque Country in northern Spain. Now, this is a full carbon fibre enduro capable bike running on 29-inch wheels rather than the 26 you saw on the Trek. And it's got 150mm travel out back compared to the 100mm that you see on the Trek, and it's got 160 on the front here. Okay, so let's take a quick look between the original 92 XTR and the modern 2019. First up, you've got a triple chain set up front with a front derailleur. You don't even have those things barely anymore, 2 at the most. Out back, you've got 8 gears, whereas on that modern one, look at the spread you have there. It's a 1-by, which means 1 chainring up front and a whopping 1051 selection out back. You can climb up a house with these things. And of course, you've got a clutch on there as well, which means the chain can't come off, and it also means it's nice and silent. The brakes though, you reach for those old cantilever brakes and you will be howling because you're not going to stop anywhere in a hurry, whereas the latest brakes, of course, they're 2-piston or 4 pistons, and you're going to be able to stop in any conditions. But that is exactly what you expect when you have 27 years separating the two. Yeah, all right, I know what you're thinking, but actually, this is what we used to look like in the 90s when you rode mountain bikes. And the reason for that is because mountain biking was such a new thing that it was drawing in elements from so many other sports, both within cycling and outside of cycling. You had the road influence, check the spandex lycra thing going on. There was stuff from motocross and BMX, hence the big goggles style shades here from Oakley and the Troy Lee helmet that represents a bit of an open face look, and of course skiing and extreme skiing. Now, this is also the reason why mountain biking developed so fast, and it's where we are now, because we were able to take things from motocross, things from motorsports, things from road cycling, things from BMX, and combine them to put together, in my opinion, what is actually the best form of cycling, because it's so versatile. But in the 90s, stuff was developing at such a fast rate. There was new components coming out seemingly every month, new suspension designs, new parts of mountain bikes, constantly, and each claiming to be the respective best thing. Well, first up, the thing you're probably going to notice is how hilariously small this bike looks. So this is a 19-inch. Back in the day, I would have been riding a 21, something like that. Of course, it's completely different to what I would be riding now. I'd be riding a much bigger bike with much bigger wheels. Now, by all accounts, this is still a very good bike, a very high-end bike, but it's completely different to what we're used to riding. The handlebars on here are absolutely tiny. I'm used to running big wide bars and a tiny little stem, which offers you nice agility but puts you in a good position on a bike. What I'm noticing here is it's very hard to stop the front wheel from tracking around all over the place because it's got such a big long stem, which almost looks a bit like a tiller that you get on a sailing boat, to be honest. But looking down makes me feel very happy indeed, because just seeing the XTR, that's the thing that you look for as a mountain biker. And those brake levers just look glorious. 3 fingers, they may be, but it doesn't matter. It's not about that stuff. I really do genuinely love this stuff. But XT for most people, including myself, was something you desired so much and you wanted so much on your bikes, but it was so expensive back then in those days. For most of us, a rear mech was enough. The rear mech was the GTI badge that you used to put on your Golf 1.1. The brakes, however, the performance is a little bit different, because unlike disc brakes that we have today, these don't really stop you. They kind of just slow you down, which made descending, on top of the geometry being bad, something altogether quite a lot worse. With bikes in this era, it's easy to see why outsiders of mountain biking would think they were almost a bit suicidal, you know, downhill being classed as an extreme sport. The reason for that is the combination of your brakes not really being able to slow you down, but then the geometry and setup of a bike making it quite terrifying. That was good fun, but that's about as far as I dare take the trek. I did promise to Jamie, after all, that I wouldn't damage his pride and joy. It is, after all, a bit of a collector's piece, but thankfully, he's lent me something else to continue the video with. This is the Foes LTS, an altogether completely different bike from the Trek we've just been looking at. This also came out in about 1994, I think it was prototyped in 93, and it's got a very different design. So it's a single pivot out back, it's got a regular head tube, regular seat tube, and a monocoque style front end, or a semi-monocoque. So it's essentially 2 big parts welded together. Note the hole in the middle is essentially to create stiffness by pulling the 2 parts of the tube together. Well, didn't seriously think I was going to carry on with a new bike of that era without changing appropriately. Yeah, laugh it up again, but the AC/DC thing, I thought there was a weak kind of link in there somewhere. The frame shares vague similarity, as does a Trek actually, to the Flying V guitar. And I know that the rock purists out there will remind me that Angus Young never actually used a Flying V, but hey, it's a weak link and I'm going with it. The thing is with this, it's got 150mm of travel out back and a little 75mm fork up front, which, to be fair, just can't keep up with it. And that actually says everything about mountain biking in this era, because it was experimental. Everything was being developed furiously. And in this era, people took to customizing their bikes heavily. People weren't just running full XT or XTR or anything else on their bikes. They were using a combination of different parts. On here you've got an Answer ATAC stem, Hyperlite bars, and more importantly, these purple Cook Brothers cranks. It's still running XTR rings, it's still running XTR chain, still running the rear derailleur and stuff like that. But really, people were doing this because they were trying to find the best new thing to put on their bikes. And as try as all of these brands did, nothing was quite as good as XTR. XTR always delivered. Everything has changed with frame layout and frame geometry. If we leave the wheel size out of this, just look at the stem difference between them. We're now running much longer bikes with much shorter stems. It's a much more sensible thing to do. You get the longer wheelbase, you get more grip going uphill, you get more stability going downhill, and the bike is much more in control. When you're riding a bike with a long stem, it pitches your weight much further over the bars, and it's a very nervous feeling. However, we did get used to it back in the day. It's only when you compare the bikes directly side by side you realise how much better today's bikes are. When it comes to the brakes though, there simply is no comparison. It's like a line has been drawn in the sand. The brakes we have today allow us to have control on any terrain, and you've got all the power you need at a touch of a fingertip, whether you're using a 2-piston design or a 4-piston design. You can completely tailor them to suit the way you want to ride. Cantilever brakes were great at slowing you down, but you could never really rely on them. When the rims got wet, they didn't really work. Modulation differed depending on pads that you used and the way you set them up. Today's brakes, it's literally night and day. The stuff back in the day that you would maybe go down for a dare, you can go down stuff much steeper and have full control. In fact, you can ride stuff today that you just simply wouldn't be able to ride. Now, much like the foes, the Orbea also has 6 inches of rear wheel travel, but it's also got 6 up front, and the bike is lighter and far more capable. Hook that up with a 12-speed transmission and there's nothing you can't climb up, and there's virtually nothing you can't descend. It's well known that I love my retro mountain bike gear, and today's been amazing, getting to ride these real early 90s bikes with the original XTR on against this modern day absolute beast of a bike. But really, there's no comparison at all. These bikes are in a completely different era. They're almost insignificant compared to what you can do on a modern bike. But it is important to acknowledge the fact that we got to this via this. These bikes are really important. The refinement that brands like Trek did are responsible for this. Fringe brands like Foes Racing were really pushing the envelope with a 6-inch travel bike way back in 1994. Without this, we certainly wouldn't have what we have now. Now, XTR may well be the pinnacle of drivetrain evolution, but what's important to remember is whilst this is the absolute top end stuff you find on the best bikes of the pro racers around the world, it filters down, which is why I cannot wait to see what's coming next from Shimano.
It's Retro Week here on GMBN. We've got a themed week, loads of cool stuff talking about the history of mountain bikes and digging out some old bikes and riding them.
Yeah, so we did dig out our old bikes, our 3 bikes like this. We're going to put some challenges together.
Well, some bikes are definitely better than others, and that's what we're going to find out today. Who has the best retro bike?
This is a Kona Lava Dome from 1989. This is the bike I used to do my paper round on and then race at the weekends. It's mostly original. It's got a snowflake front wheel. It's got a Ringley bottle cage, and it is reliable.
Is that mech more than the bike?
It is.
I'd say quirky.
I like it. Nice. So this is my Marin Shoreline Trail. This thing has 3 inches of travel front and rear. It is built for freeride. It says it right here, FRS, Freeride Sport. It's pretty gnarly. The stem's pretty big. Looks like a banana.
Fugly.
Absolutely disgusting. This is my GT Shazang. It's a titanium frame. It's from around the mid-90s. It's not an original, we'll get to that later. And I think this is super cool because this has got full XTR and everything.
Super nice.
Classic. All right, what about the cool factor of these brands? Who's been like the top pros and going through history? Kona, I don't know, like Joe Murray was the original. Yeah. Cindy Devine, old Daniel racer.
Daniel Championship.
Borden, Robbie Borden.
Okay.
Dave Hemmings.
What about you?
Dave Hemmings did ride those.
Dave Hemmings did ride this, and it's the only one I know.
Earthquake Jake Watson, the late Earthquake Jake, he famously rode a Giant, one of those.
Surprisingly not as many as I would think of for a company like that.
Yeah.
I can't think about it.
For heritage.
Well, Mercedes Gonzalez, Julie Furtado, Hans Ray, Rishi Graywell, Mike King, Steve Peat, Brian Lopes, Nicholas Brulé, Fabian Burrell. The list goes on and on. Probably the biggest racing brand of all time, I think.
Points to Doddy.
Points to Doddy.
None for you,
None for me.
Right, in 1995, I raced the National Downhill Championship on this very bike in the morning as a youth or a junior. Then went home and did my paper round on the same bike with a number plate on and went back to watch the elites. So back in the day, these bikes weren't all about racing, they're about paper rounds and messing around, skids, wheelies.
Car parks.
Car park stuff.
Exactly. So who's got the best bike for dicking around on?
Ooh.
That's the challenge.
Yeah. I've got one of those.
Nice. How narrow the barber.
Oh! I can't do that.
It's like an MBUK cover.
That is it. That's, the Hanzuli. That's nice.
It's straight out of dirt.
Wow.
This is the one where you end up going backwards around the car park.
We're landing on your back.
Why?
Wow. Andre will be super impressed with that.
And the cool factor. And then go for a ride.
Yeah.
Speed.
You make it true, Hans. You do that, didn't you?
Go on.
I think it's just wheelies, isn't it? That's what it is.
This is a wheelie machine.
Just wheelies.
Good wheelie. Turn around. Turn around.
That's really good. Oh. He's going for a wheel. Oh, snap. Oh, yeah. Now that's control.
Back hops, I'm no good at trials.
Ooh.
Doddy can do back hops.
Oh, wow. I don't think I can do back.
Rock walk. Tidy.
I think, okay. Wheelies.
I want to see him loop back again. It won't be the first time on a video. The bike looks wrong.
This bike's pretty good for
Sweet skid.
the rock. Did you
Good
ever do?
endo. I think the forks just bend backwards.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been good if the front wheels off the ground.
At the end of that challenge, Doddy is the winner.
Right, for this one, we're sending over to the GMBN fans on our Instagram. Who's got the coolest retro bike? Which one would you rep? Neil?
This one.
Done.
Coolest.
Doddy? I think Doddy's got it, isn't it?
True.
Doddy might have it. Me?
Nah.
You think your camera can take the wrath of
Show us the good side of the Marin.
This is either side.
Go ahead on so you can't see it.
Either way. Made in the USA.
By a lady called Taiwan.
Hey, this is cool, man. I got dual suspension.
My Kona Lava Dome got a super nice percentage of 42. Blake's Marin Shoreline Trail, 57%. You lot are mental. That bike is the least super nice bike I've ever seen. But with the win, Doddy's Zhizang got a super nice percentage of 58.
All right, boys, I've given you a can of fizzy pop. You've put them in your bottle cages because this challenge is all about how smooth is your ride, because I got dual suspensionization right on my rig right here.
I have
Neil.
suspensionization.
You
Wow.
are gonna. So the thing is, you're gonna put it on your bike. I've put mine in my bottle cage right here. Look at that.
It's gonna pop.
It's gonna. Mine's hopefully doesn't fall out. We're gonna ride this gnarly section just up the top, get to the bottom. You're gonna have a refreshing drink, probably all over your face.
I might have to
Not in your mouth.
do mine at the bottom.
You,
I'll do it wherever I can get past.
I might have to walk up and get mine.
I can feel the hiccups coming already.
Quite scared, guys. Come on now.
What's this?
That's like triple the speed I'm even going to be able to do.
Oh my god!
Drop it in! Oh my, can't see.
Oh my God. Oh. Oh.
Hey! Did you hit your ball?
No, that was knob. Oh,
yeah.
fully sat on that. I can't ride that. Oh my God. I've got to check it. I was literally fully out of control. I unclipped and rode that on the sausage on the end of my saddle.
Oh!
I think I nearly dislocated my shoulder in pain.
Really? Let's do that again.
I don't know what I did. I went off the first bit, unclipped, and I went.
Have you checked the old member?
It's fine. There's no. It's just a bit sore.
Let's try that again.
Yeah,
In slow-mo.
After our bone shaking and sausage squashing first run, we moved on to our second section.
I'm coming! I sprung a leak. That's not good.
Well then.
Well, my magic cup is not really magic, is it? I sprung a leak and I just bombed it. Oh well. I will say it went smoothly if they don't look at the replay. Go on! Oh, here comes Neil.
Oh,
Quick, crack that.
Stay
Gotta
on.
see it. Mine didn't break at all. Oh, that was like a weak Ribena open.
it's not so bad.
Yeah, mine wasn't that bad either.
I think my wrists are broken.
Thought he is the smoothest rider. Actually, he's quite nervous. He might be going slow, so that's cheating. Mine was all right. Mine didn't fizz at all.
Because you Canada's got a big hole in it.
No, it hasn't. Go on, Johnny! Go on, Johnny! Go on, Johnny! Oh my gosh! Ah, yeah! Cheers. Yours didn't fizz much, you're right.
Oh, right.
Yours didn't fizz much. So your ones were quite weak Ribena-y. They didn't fizz at all. For some reason, mine sprung a leak. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's because of this tug thing here. Sprung a leak and I just like can bombed it, whatever you call it.
Oh, you suggested that
Shotgunned it.
your suspension didn't work very well, and your can shocked.
Or because I've got suspension, my confidence was higher.
I think you could go
so
faster.
I could go faster.
I couldn't go fast at all because I was slipping off the pedals constantly.
I couldn't even see. It was just horrendous.
Did you?
I think we
bull
all
rode out up there.
I think we all scored 1 point for that.
Yeah.
All particularly not smooth.
Not smooth at all. Oh, I'll tell you what's good for this. Motorbike noises. See you at the bottom. Am I 250?
Change off.
So
only one last thing to do, I suppose, is to take this bike for a ride and see if you actually enjoy riding these relics.
Or like an epic ride.
Not epic.
Definitely.
It's gonna be epic with these things, I tell you. You ready?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Hang on. Lock-ons. Grip shift, more like. Neil, yours is going to be all right climbing.
I quite happily pedal this uphill.
What's the problem, Neil?
I think my crank might be coming loose.
Coming loose or coming off?
Well, both, I suppose.
Where's Dotty? Dotty, what are you doing?
Checking my bell end's all right.
Nice.
Sounds smooth, Blake.
Oh, there's something going on with it.
Doesn't look like much of a climber, that bike.
No. It's real heavy. Right, it doesn't want to get in gear.
Strange for grip shift to not perform. It's definitely not the climbing bike, is it?
Oh no. Oh no. Hey, it's broken. Hang on. Hate this. Look at the chain, right? Look how loose it is. It's because that's SRAM and that's Shimano.
Climbs like a dream, to be honest. Perfect position, it's basically like a dirt road bike. Look at that stem. I'm not really bothered about this though, it's what comes after this. It just hurts!
No sick.
Bloody hell.
Oh my god!
Oh, painful.
You went into this hole and you just went blood.
Oh god.
That was good fun.
Yeah,
It feels like a running out on a normal bike.
yeah.
This is the vintage practicality round. You get a point for each year since manufacture, but you lose one for each upgrade you've had to do to keep the bike running.
So on my bike, it's 2001. The two things I had to change on it is the rear mech and my tyres of choice.
So my GT, I reckon it's about 1998, can't be too specific, so that puts it about 21 years old. I've only had to change the tyres because the tyres have perished.
So mine's the oldest bike. I score 30 points for that, and it's pretty much original, except for the stem, the grips, the front brake, the back brake, the shifter, the cassette, the rear mech, the chain ring, the cranks, the tyres, and that's about it. I think if you pick the smoothest trails, that was all right. That was quite fun.
That was good fun. But out of 3, would you do that?
Well, I think give it a 3 if you think that was ace and you do that all the time.
Yeah.
Ride your retro bike on trails.
Yeah.
Give it a 2 if it's okay, it's fun occasionally, but you wouldn't want to do it all the time. Give it a 1 if you never want to do it ever again.
I'd go 2.
2.
Not a chance with riding it all the time.
No, hell
way.
no.
It's so hard to ride.
Rough downhill trails on a fully rigid 26-inch bike, horrible, but that was fun.
That was fun. We did pick the right trail though. You know the scores.
Yeah. Right, so to the scores, and of course these are for the bikes, not for us.
Yeah.
In third place, the 2001 Marin Shore, whatever it's called, Shoreline Trail.
Shoreline Trail.
With 23 points. The newest bike is the worst, apparently.
Yep.
It's a common occurrence.
Yeah. I would have thought that.
I mean, according to our accurate scoring system, at least.
No, but this is like legit, isn't it?
Legitly disgusting. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
In second place, the Kona Lava Dome with 27 points.
Oh, and that, wow, it is inevitable.
Well, in first place by a long margin, 32 points goes to the GT. How'd you call it? What'd you call it?
Shazang.
Shazang.
X1 Zang.
Good old work, Gary Turner.
It's a lovely bike, to be fair.
It is nice. That is full retro, isn't it?
It's a cool bike as well.
Do you know what? Even forgetting the rest of the bike, just that bit alone is terrifying.
Change the bar and stem.
Yeah.
Good bike.
Slightly shorter and be all
My
right,
dad's
right?
got that. My dad's got
The
that
frame
bike.
is really comfortable. The transmission, pretty flawless. The brakes work. It's good.
Loads more stuff coming from Retro Week, so keep your eyes peeled. We've got a retro podcast, a history of mountain bike documentary we shot in Marin County.
Oh, yep, where this thing is from.
Yep, coming up in the next few days. Loads of good stuff.
Yeah, and if you want to get involved with some of the merch we've got these cool retro t-shirts in our store. If you want to get involved, there are a limited, like, amount. Yeah, we're not going to do it ever again.
That really dirty one is very, very limited.
This one's very limited.
So one,
so is
well,
that
it's 2 off.
Keep an eye out on GMBN Tech as well. There's loads of stuff coming up at the same time as GMBN. Plenty of cool stuff.
Thumbs up if you like ragging old bikes around the woods. So we're here in Marin County, just north of San Francisco, and we're going to meet a few really interesting people and learn a lot about the history of mountain biking.
Yeah, which of course mountain biking fundamentally started in Marin County way back in time, and we're going to go and chat to 3 of those founding fathers.
So we're now in Fairfax, which is home of the Museum of Bicycling, but also for me it's a really famous place. It's Repack, the original downhill track.
Yeah. It's kind of funny actually thinking of mountain biking, the original part of it was downhill racing.
Yeah.
Technically, these guys pushing these old paperboy modified bikes up to the top of that mountain over there.
So this is where it was invented, but there's some dispute of where people rode off-road the first time, but there's no dispute. This is where people like Charlie Kelly, Joe Breeze, Gary Fisher, this is where the first bikes were made.
Yeah, and hopefully we're going to see the very first bike, or at least an iteration of that.
So we've been driving around Marin, I call it Marin, growing up in the UK in the early 90s, you see the bikes, but actually it's called Marin, isn't it, of course?
Marin County, yeah.
There's loads of famous names from the bike company, like Palisades Trail,
Bear Valley,
Muir Woods.
Yeah, they're all here as street names.
Recognise all the names.
Yeah, it's really cool to see.
It's almost the mecca of mountain biking. I'm going to take a look round. We're 30 minutes north of San Francisco, so it seems crazy to come straight out of the city. You're into this amazing landscape. It looks like there's some amazing trails up in the woods as well.
Yeah, you can see why it sort of lends itself so perfectly to mountain biking.
It's a little bit hippie. It's kind of really affluent around here. But
very much so, yeah.
Loads of cool old camper vans and stuff driving around. It's a cool place.
I mean, a lot of those early stories I heard were it was always an affluent place.
Yeah.
And it was almost frowned upon that these Repack riders back in the day were doing something so against the grain in society.
There's loads of cool street art as well in Fairfax. We saw that stuff.
Yeah,
all about
really
Repack.
cool. Loads of stuff detailing sort of the GPS coordinates of that original. Right, I'm hoping we can go and see that ourselves.
I know, I really
actually
want to get up there. Like, I used to race downhill as a pro, and it's
Yeah.
like, this is where it all started. I've got to go and see it. I'd love to go and do a flat out run down it. So it's time for a history lesson. We've got a couple of very important people to tell us all about mountain biking.
Somewhere we have always wanted to go. Let's go and check it out. Walking in, we were greeted by Charlie Kelly and given a tour of the fascinating bike history in the museum. Charlie Kelly's a real character. Growing up in Marin County, he was a keen cyclist who helped organise the Velo Club Tamalpais, a roadie for the psychedelic rock band The Grateful Dead, organiser of Repack races and the co-founder of the mountain bikes company alongside Gary Fisher.
I was hanging out with this Grateful Dead head girl who said, "Man, I know this guy who's just like you. He's this hippie bike fanatic, you know, and hangs out with the Grateful Dead. You're the Sons of Champlain roadie. You guys would just like immediately be friends." And the day I saw him, he's only the second guy I'd ever seen on a self-tire bike. We introduced ourselves to each other and, you know, history and all that. But that's how I met Gary.
Gary Fisher, a fast young road racer that was temporarily banned for his hair being too long. He met Charlie through his shared love of the Grateful Dead. He was right there at the start of mountain biking. In fact, he was considered, along with Charlie and Joe, as one of the inventors of the modern mountain bike.
We're driving down the road, and here's this kid hitchhiking, and he had a beard down to here, he had hair down to here, and pick him up, you know, and slides in. And so we just became friends from that moment on, you know, and of course, as you can clearly see, we've been dear friends for 45 years now.
Yeah.
Joe Breeze, a bicycle frame builder that turned his hand to designing and building the very first all-new mountain bikes and amongst the fastest racers on Repack.
Gary and Joe are the two guys I've shared most of the adventure in my life with, you know. There's a bond there that just you can't duplicate.
Repack is the name of the racing that took place on the slopes of Mount Tamalpais above the town of Fairfax. A downhill time trial dropping 300 metres with an average grade of 14 degrees. The winners became legends around town.
The course was selected for a number of factors. One, it's here, right? Two, it's really steep, it's a super challenge. And third, when you're done, you're home, you know? The race really went on for about maybe three and a half years, the real heyday of that race. And by the end of that era, it was known to be the best free show in Fairfax.
But this was a big deal. I'd walk through town and people would stagger out of the bars and say, "You gotta win next week, Gary. My money's on you," you know, and all this stuff. And it was like, people would walk out there to the woods to see it. And when I go around looking for prizes, no problem.
Everybody knew when the race was, and in addition to all the participants, the girlfriends and the wives and the friends, well, they'd hike into the bottom because that's where most of the really hard turns were near the bottom anyway, where all the photos were taken. Now, Joe was the immediate catalyst, but if it wasn't him, it was going to be somebody else because the bike was going to evolve to deal with the environment. And if the environment is going really fast downhill on something rough, well, you're going to come up with big tires. You're going to come up with a different geometry, and Joe was the guy who did it.
Charlie Kelly, who came to me and one day and says, hey, build me a new frame. I'm tired of busting these old frames. And I'm looking at him like, well, are we just having fun out here? You want me to get serious about this now? And so he says, yeah, and he starts waving about $300 in front of me or so. And then I think, well, I could probably get tubing for 10 frames for that. And that's what I did. And I drew them up very carefully with a side view and a top view, make sure everything was going to work out. This is the prototype, this Breezer. It's the first time he had a frame built specifically for what we're doing, outfitted with all brand new parts. First shiny new mountain bike, essentially.
The first few trips down it, we all were riding on coaster brakes. Well, all the heat from that friction that you need to slow down all goes into something the size of your fist. And that thing is just about white hot because of the smoke just pouring out of those hubs. And the grease would be running down the spokes there. And if you let the thing cool off, it would just howl. You had to go home and repack it with grease, otherwise it was just howling and howling.
Legend says that this small group of riders actually invented mountain biking.
We really changed people's perception of what a bike is. I mean, totally changed their perception of what a bicycle is and what it could do and everything. Once they try it, there's no going back.
We didn't invent the mountain bike. The bike was, somebody invented a bike a long time ago. What we invented, if anything, was a new way to use a bike, which is race downhill on bad roads. But I think if anybody else had come up with the same idea of racing downhill, probably would have evolved similarly. And we just happen to be the guys that live at the Waimea Bay of mountain biking.
Sure.
You know, where those guys sit on the beach and look at the waves every day, all day. And I say, the guys who invented surfing didn't drive to the beach, they lived there. You know, we live at the mountain biking beach. And
Gary Fisher still holds a record time for Repack, 4 minutes 22. Mountain biking eventually moved on and the local authorities made it more difficult to ride the trail. The last two Repack races in 1983 and 84 were a bit for old time's sake. After the 1984 race, Marin County land and water managers made it clear that Repack, the race, could be no more. There was little resistance, the race's time had come and gone. But could the time theoretically be beaten?
It's I did a good time on it, but it could be broken. There's no doubt about it. You know, somebody's a faster pedaler than I was. And the bikes are certainly better, you know, than what we were running.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Got some good swag as well. I'll tell you what, I can't believe I used to ride that stuff on those bikes. It's ridiculous.
It's only over there, Doddy.
I know, we haven't got any bikes though, so...
I've got a good idea. Don't worry, I've sorted us some bikes. I'm just going to pull straws. Who rides what?
Okay, I'll see where this is going.
This one isn't even the short straw.
Okay, pretty good condition that. Nice saddle, nice crispy orange chain, wide control handlebars, stem like a tiller on a canal boat, very good.
This is... Oh, hello. Your very best beach cruiser.
There's no brakes on that thing.
Coaster brake. That's what the boys did back in the day, so if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us.
I think those forks are bent as well.
Unlucky.
Well, at least my brakes aren't on the wrong way around.
That's true.
Why are you pushing your bike, God?
It's not an optimum climbing position kind of bike. I think you'll find that the guys at Repack back in the day used to push their bikes all the way up the top until someone decided to put twin chainrings on them. This has got one gear, so I think you'll find I'm exempt from climbing. But it's flat now, so I should probably go.
That's it, we're at Repack, home of downhill mountain bike racing. For me, I'm so excited.
Slightly nervous.
You're not excited? I'm excited.
All right, I'm laughing at the bikes, but back in the day, their bikes probably weighed as much as both of these.
40 pounds or something.
Well, the original one was over 50, I think, at Breezer #1. Rather than, this is not going to work like we thought. Well, not going to work like he thought anyway. It might do for him, but I'm hoping he forgets his brakes the wrong way around, because that's the only chance I have.
I think he's changed them to the right way around.
Has he? Oh, damn.
Well,
I'm genuinely concerned. What you can't see is there is actually enough gradient here that as soon as you're off the brakes, you're in trouble. And there aren't any brakes except for the one that doesn't do anything. Cool, at least I'm going to look really good doing it. I can't even get my feet in the right position. This is genuinely scary. It may not look it at these breakneck speeds, but this is genuinely.
What do you think of that, Doddy?
It's all right.
Right, dude, sorry you drew the short straw, and these corners have been a lot of fun, but I feel like I've got to go to top.
Yeah, someone has to.
May never get a chance again. I'm going to push all the way to top and do a full run of Repack.
Stoked. Enjoy. So while you've been up at the top of that mountain, I've been in here in Gestel House, local bikers pub, having a couple of beers. I've got to tell you, I did get a short straw there.
You did?
It wasn't even enjoyable, I've got to say. I have to come back another time.
To be honest, it was hard work on the bike I had, never mind yours.
How long did it take you to get up there?
It took me about 40 minutes to hike to the top, but it was worth it. The views are amazing, and it's just really nice to be up there. Turned round, came back down. I've got to say, it's pretty tame by, you know, a mountain bike trail, obviously it's fire road, but once you come down it fast, there's blind brows, and it's like a roller coaster whole way, blind corners, fast, drifty. I loved it, it was amazing. They used to do it on those bikes, that is incredible. They must have been.
So they were fully tapped then, back then?
I'm impressed.
Wow, there you go, that's pretty cool.
But it's good to do it. Cheers. Alright everybody, welcome to another edition of What is Faster, and today we've got two wildly different bikes that are kind of designed for the same thing, although from different eras, and we're going to find out what is faster. Okay, so we've got two cross-country bikes here, both kind of from the left field of thinking when it comes to bike design. Let's start with the easier one, the bang up-to-date Orbea Alma. Kind of unusual because it's got a rigid fork on the front of this, so full carbon fibre frame and fork. 29 of course, got a super lightweight build on this thing, light tyres, got some E13 XCX carbon wheels. It's pretty much as light as they come. In fact, this is lighter than my road bike. And this is a white PRST1. If you're thinking, what the hell is that? Then you'd be right. But also, check out the video I've done where it's all about this bike. I talk about the history of this bike. This is from the late 90s. It was a crazy design that some people absolutely loved back in the 90s, had sort of a cult following. I talk all about that in the video. So as you can tell, it's got this crazy fork on the front of it, a linkage fork running this shock. This was a cross-country bike. Actually, this won UK national rounds in the hands of Paul Lazenby. I think late 90s it would have been. And at the time, that was unheard of. No one rode full suspension bikes at cross-country. So, you know, it was kind of a leader in the terms of cross-country bikes that were full suspension. So completely the other end to that, fully rigid, full suspension. It was super efficient at small bump compliancy. That fork really, really works. The white PRS-T1 weighs in a very respectable 12.5 kilograms or 27 pounds. Whereas the Orbea Alma weighs a ludicrous 7.5 kilograms, which is 16.5 pounds. Of course, at What's Faster series of videos, I just do a timed run down the hill on these bikes, which I am going to do. These are cross-country bikes, so I'm going to do it just for the hell of it. I think it could be funny, could be interesting, see how close these things are going to be down the hill. I kind of think my money is going to be on that bike, but fully rigid does get pretty wild pretty quick. Let's see, that fork feels crazy going downhill fast. Not very nice, if I'm honest. On that previous video, I almost lost the front end, washed out the front end a couple of times, so it's going to be scary. Both of them have got fixed posts, no drop posts on here. 26-inch wheels versus 29. Who knows? I think it could be close, but we'll see. I'm expecting one of these is probably going to be at the bottom of the leaderboard because we've got some fast bikes up there. But also, because they're cross-country bikes, it seems crazy to me that I really should do a cross-country lap as well to compare the times, new school against old school, see what is faster. Okay, so I'll do the downhill times first, and which one do I want to ride first? Well, I think I'll take the white because at least that's going to feel like a rocket pedaling back up afterwards. So here we go. All right, first downhill run on the white. Slightly nervous of hitting all these jumps because there's quite a lot of them at the start of this trail, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Right, it's time for the downhill run on the Orbea Alma. Already feels less scary. The rigid fork feels pretty crazy sometimes. It's mad how fast you kind of steer. Sounds stupid, but it's so direct. So you've got to be pretty perfect with it, which I think will be all right. And especially down this top section where it's all jumps, it's like a big BMX, very light one. So I'm hoping it's going to be really fast down here. So when it gets rough, I'm going to have to be a bit more careful and it's going to be rough. So here goes. All right, let's start with how both bikes felt. I would say they are the wildest bikes I've ridden down that track for sure, the scariest. Kind of the white was okay on the jumps, fine. It's kind of unpredictable, the front end. I thought I was getting the hang of it, and all of a sudden I'd compress on the takeoff and the sort of fork would want to go one way or the other. So not brilliant. So I kind of reined myself in a bit. It would have been easy to have a big crash on both of those bikes. Fully rigid was, obviously that's not what this bike is designed for. This is designed for sort of epic marathon riding. So it kind of obviously didn't suit it either. It was kind of fast-ish on the jumps, but again scary, so I didn't go crazy on each. The times, so the white PRST1 did it in 1 minute 58.3, which is what's that? It's about 7 and a bit seconds slower than any other bike, slower than my Canyon Lux cross-country bike that I rode in really wet conditions, so by far the slowest bike so far. What about the fully rigid? Could I go faster without any suspension and on super lightweight tyres as well? Well, I did, a little bit. The Alma did it in a 1:56.9. So kind of as I predicted, both of those bikes went right to the bottom of the leaderboard by, actually a lot further than I thought. I thought, everything so far has been pretty close. But if you look at it, the white PRST at 1:58, compare that to the fastest bike, the Nukeproof Giga at 1:41. So that is pretty significant. 17 seconds over less than a 2-minute track. Shows you just how capable those new bikes are. I know we're comparing apples to oranges. The Giga is meant to do those things, but 20 years does make a big difference in bike design. All right, bonus part 2 for what is faster. Got 2 cross-country bikes, I might as well time them both around a cross-country loop. This place is actually really kind of slow and really bumpy, so the white might just take it, but it's gonna be interesting. The Alma is so light, so yeah, part 2, cross-country. All right, enough messing around. Now to the cross-country times where we're in the proper domain of both bikes, so a bit more respectable. The cross-country loop was about 3 kilometers, just under, and had 120 meters of climbing, so not crazy, kind of a little bit shorter than your average XCO lap, I suppose, but enough to tire me out. So the white PRST did it in 15 minutes 17, felt okay, over the bumps, the bike does feel good. Like I've already said, in the technical riding, that's where it kind of, even on cross-country style technical riding, it kind of feels sketchy, kind of unpredictable, and actually didn't feel, to me, that efficient, because I've been riding the Alma. The Alma did it, a minute and a half faster, so it did it in a 13 minutes 51, and like I said, that bike is so light. When you stand up and crank that thing up smooth trails, it just moves. It's crazy how fast that feels. It does feel restricted a bit again. There's kind of technical descents even on that cross-country loop, but yeah, a lot quicker in the terrain it was designed for. And even that isn't quite what the Alma is designed for. It's meant for doing like bigger, longer rides, less bumpy, kind of more epic gravelly rides, I would say, but quite significantly faster on the modern bike. Would you expect that? Yeah, I guess I would. It's quite a lot there. So there you go, comparing 2 wildly different bikes. I know there's kind of 25 years between them, but it was fun to some degree, kind of scary to others, but let me know what bikes you want to see next on the What's Faster and I can compare them. Please don't make them any scarier than the white PRST though.
In the words of Bob Dylan, the times they are changing, but by how much? Well, today we're going to find out, everybody, because we are doing a retro superbike against a modern day budget bike, XC Edition. Now, back in the day, cross-country bikes and the technology on them was moving at an exponential rate. It was rapidly growing and expanding, trying all sorts of weird and wonderful things. From all sorts of carbon layup and carbon fiber frames becoming more commonplace to fork lockouts, suspension designs and everything else in between. But what I really want to know is, can a bike from yesteryear compete still with a budget bike of this year? Or has that technology become so outdated compared to what we have today that actually it still can't even make the cut against a more affordable bike on today's market? So first up, before we get thrashing these bikes, let's take a look at them. In the budget bike corner, we have this.
The Orbea Honor 10 from 2022, a sub £1,000 hardtail, all aluminium construction, 1x11, it's quite the beast. So then the budget bike, the Honor 10. If you're looking to get into the world of XC, I think this is a great starting point. With some pretty good numbers actually, a 68.5 degree head angle, 74.5 degree seat tube angle, and an effective top tube of 614 mil. 100 mil RockShox fork up front gives you all the bump eating capacity you probably need. Full 29-inch setup here, a 1x11 Shimano group set with that narrow wide chainring at the front, just sort of giving it a nod to some sort of the more modern technologies out there. 2 bottle mounts so we can take lots of water on there. A nice wide handlebar at 720 mil. No dropper post on this because it is the budget model, like I said. But you know what? It's got full hydraulic Shimano disc brakes again as well, so there's everything you could possibly need on there at an affordable price to get you going and racing out there. But how does it stack up against our Superbike? And well, what Superbike have I got lined up? For the old school Superbike, I've got this. A 2007 Scott Spark Limited, but not just any Scott Spark Limited, no, this is an ex-Olympians. Now, Ollie Beckinsale has very kindly entrusted me with his ex-Olympic bike from back in the day. So the parts and this bike range around between 06 to 08, so they're a good few years old now. And actually the technology on this bike isn't just sort of cutting edge for the time that it came out, it's actually ahead of the game. Almost even now, or current if you like. Things like actually this, just a quick point. This sort of Scott New DT Swiss collab shock kit is even running on, look, spherical bearings. Now you find that on things like an EXT shock, which costs about £1,000 these days. So it really is absolutely top of the line. If we run through it, I mean, there's all sorts of tech on this. You've got RockShox SID World Cups with a carbon black box crown on the top. What I think is actually one of the most bonkers thing though is this frame. So this is a full carbon Scott Spark Limited, like I said. The seat post is integrated into the frame. Like you had to cut that thing exactly to where it was be. There's no sort of external or additional seat post that inserts into the frame. It's all molded, it's all one part, and you just had this tiny little clamp for a little bit of adjustment at the top. 3x9, that's mental to me to think about even this. So you've got a massive range of gears. The brakes on this are custom Hope brakes. They've even got Ollie's Olympic rings for when he did the 08 Olympics with them engraved on there in a real nice blue color as well. Full 26-inch obviously. We've got titanium rear quick release on this. Custom Hope carbon brake levers. It looks like spaghetti junction going on at the front of here, and that's because we've obviously got brake levers, we've got 2 shifters, but we've also got front and rear lockout on the suspension as well, just adding to the madness that's going on there. I mean, this thing is absolutely mental. Now the angles on it, because it's also a size large, much like the Orbea Honor, is a 70-degree head angle, so 1.5 degrees steeper, 73.5 degree seat tube angle, so a little bit slacker there as well, and it's slightly shorter, 610 effective top tube. So just sort of going to prove that the modern way that bikes have gone, the longer, lower, slacker thing is very much in effect. Also sporting 100 mil of travel front and rear. What's this thing like to ride nowadays on modern tracks? And how's it going to stack up against that budget cross-country bike? Well, there's only one way to find out, isn't there, people? And that's to get out onto the trails. First up, the climbing test. We all know I love a good climb, and I thought we'd jump on the Orbea first to set a bit of a benchmark. Now, the Orbea weighs 13.7 kilograms, whereas the Spark weighs 11.9, and it's a full sus. So is that going to come into play, especially with the extra gearing going uphill? Well, I've picked a hill that's pretty standard. It should be about a couple of minutes long, I reckon. It's a good fire road to start, and it gets a little bit more tech, a little bit more loose as we get towards the top, and steepens as well. So is the weight going to play a difference? Wheel size, gearing, there's only one way to find out. So, Mr. Editor, cue beeps on the screen, and ready? Okay. See you in a mo! So far, so good. I think this bike actually weighs more than the full sus Scott by about a couple of kilos. So I think that's where we're gonna certainly see a difference, especially as the climb goes on. Whew. Keep the traction going. Hardtail bouncing. Okay, we're gonna swing out wide for this tight left-hander. This is where it really starts to kick up. And this is where I think the harder gearing and the weight's gonna get me a bit. Oh, it's loose, I'm skipping. Oh, could have done that 3x9. Finito. Oh man, that was tough. I pushed pretty hard there. Right, over to the old Superbike. Once I got my breath back, and let's see what kind of time that does. Whew. Okay, that's the climbing done, which means it's out with this one and in with this. Yes, and I thought a suitably old bike requires the correct attire. To the climb! Time to race Future Rich. Retro Rich incoming. See you at the top. Let's go. Very narrow bars on this bike, 620mm. Does make it a little bit twitchy. A bit of suspension at the back. It's absorbing those bumps as well. You can certainly notice the steeper head angle making it, you know, a bit twitchy up the front, should we say. Be interesting on the way down. Right, if you've got it, flaunt it, engaging granny ring. Oh, stuff of dreams. I feel good. We're spinning nicely, good cadence. This bike climbs all right. This bike's wild. I don't think I'm gonna do a backflip. Yes, granny ring. Loves the granny ring. Oh! Hey, caramba! Okay, we've made it to the top. But we still got to go back downhill and try this thing on that, which means I'm not going to give you any time to stats or thoughts or feelings just yet. You're gonna have to wait till we've gone back down to the top of the downhill. Now, as we all know, what goes up must indeed go down, and I really want to push these bikes. So again, I've chosen some trails that are actually going to sort of put all the aspects of the bike, both new and old, to the test. So we've got a real nice, fun, flowy, jumpy, bermy section at the top, and then we're going to get into something a little bit rougher, where it might distinguish between the full sus and the hardtail. But we want to know times. We want to know what it feels like. Is it terrifying? Is it going to kill me? There's only one way to find out. See you in a little bit. Goodbye. Right, downhill time, 100mm travel. The forks are fully unlocked. 29ers, they are rolling fast. Nice bit of air. Oh, yes. That's carrying good speed, this bike. Handling's pretty nice. The dropper post wouldn't go on this, I tell you. Over the braking bumps and all the stutteriness. With this bike, 2.25 tyres, the other ones are slightly narrower, so it's got plenty of grip, it goes well. Oh my gosh. That was a lively ride. Real fun at the top where it was smoother and faster and flower. And trying to carry speed where it got flatter and bumpier at the bottom was a bit tricky, even though it's got the bigger wheels. I've got a feeling that the vintage Superbike could be a bit quicker down there. It's full sus. I know the smaller wheels, when it does get bumpy like that, are sometimes a bit of a disadvantage, but there's only really one way to find out, and that is to get back to the top. Right, top of the downhill. I'm hyped, bike's ready to rip. Now I know that 29 budget bike would have gone pretty well down here, but get lost bug, I'm feeling good. And when I'm feeling good, I'm on fire. See ya! on the gas. The 26-inch wheels aren't too bad, but the twitchiness of the thing. Woo-hoo. Right, this is where, oh, it's rough. Oh, it does not like that steeper stuff. Oh, near the finish. Oh my lord, that's a huge compression. Come on, nearly there. Oh, come on, Superbike. Yeah, that's how I roll. Woo! Okay, people, the downhill is now done. That means all the riding that we're going to be doing today is finished. So we're going to need to crunch some numbers, but I kind of want to get out of this first. So, see you in a mo. But times then, because that's what I know you all want to sort of compare and contrast, because when we pitted these two bikes against each other, numbers don't lie, people. So when it comes to the uphill challenge, this was just over 2 minutes long. Now the cheap bike, the budget Honor, a respectable 2 minutes and 22 seconds. The vintage Superbike, the Retro Beast, did it in 2 minutes and 15 seconds, 7 seconds faster. Now I put that down to a couple of different things. One, gearing bizarrely actually helped there. I mean, we've dismissed that 3x9 and that front mech. That's a thing of the past, it's dead, right? However, I gotta say, the gearing, when I could shift and had the range on this, certainly did help, especially when it got steeper. And it is almost 2 kilos lighter as well. And over sort of a couple of minutes, that is gonna add up. So 7 seconds and the first win of the day to the Scott Spark Limited Vintage all the way. Now those numbers when it comes to the downhill. So the downhill section, remember, is slightly longer in time, and that's because our uphill was pretty direct and straight up there. The downhill had a fair bit of wriggling in it. The Scott Spark, the Limited, I'll tell you in a moment, but the Honor, 3 minutes, 5 seconds. Moving across. The Scott Spark Limited, full suspension, 100mm travel, remember 26-inch wheels and a seat post so high you could run a flag off of it. Did it in 3:22. So actually it's a little feral chunk slower there, you know what I mean? So, and I'm gonna put that down to a couple of things. One, it felt twitchy as anything. Honestly, it felt like I was going catapulted out of the front door most of the time. And the 26-inch wheels, they were bone shakers. Even with that full sus, when you'd hit the braking bumps and things like that, honestly, it was just rattling you to pieces. You know, it's a steeper head angle, it's a shorter wheelbase, it's a lively ride, and those narrow bars, literally, I mean, how, Ollie? I don't know how you did it. The Honor then, longer wheelbase, slightly longer in the reach, bit more room for maneuver, 29-inch wheels. There's no rear suspension, I know that, but for the rolling capabilities, that 100mm travel, again, it actually was slightly more confidence-inspiring, which meant I could push slightly harder in the turns, get a little bit more air under those tyres and carry a bit more speed on the rough and choppy stuff. Now, bear in mind, back in the day, XC races would be like 2 hours plus long. So something like that probably would be faster then. But nowadays, times have changed, things have moved on. So it actually turns out that you can go real fast and have a good time on a budget XC bike. Anyway, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. I think I'm gonna have to get this bike out on another ride if Ollie will let me, but let me know in the comments. I'm out of here. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. And until next time, toodle pip.
It's 2011, there's a giant ash cloud shutting down air traffic all across the Atlantic Ocean. We're about to find out why Danny Hart can't sit down, and I'm Rich Payne 10 years ago. I'm at a downhill race, I'm racing at Bike Park Wales with my peak descending performance downhill bike.
But is it? Is that still peak performance? Or have times changed so much that a modern day enduro bike with its newer, albeit similar geometry and much better tech, actually quicker and better than a downhill bike that I would ride back in the day?
Enduro bikes have got longer and slacker over the last 10 years to the point where really they could be a downhill bike of 10 years ago, but with that modern tyres, modern drivetrain, modern damping and suspension. So we've dug this out of the loft to to see if it really, geometry is the most important thing still, and how much of an extra speed boost those little modern ticks give. And me and Rich basically keep drawing in all these different challenges, cornering, old cheap bikes, all of that. So we'll be following each other down the track, just seeing who's got that extra edge, how the bike feels, and if something like this still stands up to modern performance.
Right, Isaac. Now, before we get on to the bikes, I want to talk numbers, because I feel like a little top trump style thing coming on here. So
that's very 2010, isn't it?
It is very 2010. So my Orbea Rallon, it's a size large, and it's got a head angle of 64 degrees.
Oh, so I've got 63 degrees. So
really?
I'm going to be absolutely fine cruising flat out.
Stable at high speed.
Yeah.
But the reach on mine is a 485.
So, 406.
406?
Yeah, this is the big difference, I think.
Oh my
it's crazy.
goodness, that's cozy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go for a wheelbase. 1,260 mil.
Okay, so 1,194. So it's that reach brings that 60 mil extra, I think. But my chainstays are 440. What are yours?
440 as well, actually. So
that's weird.
exactly the same.
Yeah.
Well, what else have you got? Have you got bottom bracket height?
Got bottom bracket height. I do in inches, I think.
In inches?
Well, we've got to stay.
Okay,
talk to our friends across the pond. It is 13.8 inches, 350 mil.
343 mil.
So it's pretty close.
It's very similar, isn't it?
Yeah.
What other numbers you got, if any?
I have a top tube, I think.
Oh, top
is
tube.
590 mil.
Top tube. Oh, you've hit me with a number. Hang on. Don't know.
Oh, I win. I've got more numbers than Rich.
He's got more numbers than me. Okay, well so actually, sort of breaking that down, there are some numbers there that are very similar. Head angle, what do we say,
and
bottom bracket.
Bottom bracket and chainstays are basically smack the same.
Yeah.
And it's just you've got an extra 60 mil in reach, which corresponds to a longer wheelbase. And that's really the only difference.
Okay, I mean, obviously, and then we could sort of throw some
wheel
notes.
size.
Wheel size, 26, 29, travel, 200 mil, give or take, front or back.
Yeah.
160 rear, 170 front for myself. Weight?
Weight, 17.7.
Oh, I hope you've been going to the gym, because mine's 14.4. Yeah.
Well, we're going downhill, so it doesn't matter.
We'll see. Okay, well, with that then, let's head to the trail.
Drop it in. Straight out the gate, I'm struggling to keep up. The bike feels super sluggish, and Rich is able to pop these doubles so much easier than me. This is the first choppy rough section where the extra travel means I can take my brain out and just let the bike run.
Big drift from Rich. The downhill bike is million sections like this where it's just flat out, double, and heaps.
This is the main way that the bikes are changed, isn't
I
it?
feel like this is quite the disadvantage where a downhill bike in general is out, but an old one especially.
I'm sweating.
And you are sweating.
I'm sweating in my proper vintage pants.
that old Rich kit of yours.
Yeah.
But we are at the top. We're at the Martian. Now, this is where things should get interesting, right?
This is a pro line. This is a proper downhill track.
Yeah.
This has just been ploughing through all the rough stuff so far, which is good because the tyres are quite exciting.
Yeah,
so I've just been leaning back and going with it.
This is it. This is where sort of the warm-up has come to this trail, and I think this is really going to sort of show the differences between the two rides, hopefully.
Hopefully, or that they're actually the same.
Why would you do that? Why would you make a drop to flat? Oh, all the way around that side.
It's hard to get up to speed, but the bike opened up this gap for me. So we've done a couple of runs now, sort of downhill track. How was it on that bike?
Well, I mean, I'm very used to this bike. It's sort of one of my go-to enduro bikes. It handles exactly as I'd expect it to. It accelerates, it decelerates, the parts on it, the suspension.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very, very used to it. So it's sort of a home from home. But for you, that bike is obviously new, and you've never really ridden a downhill bike, let alone an old downhill bike before. How are you finding
pretty limited experience with that. It's cool, it's quite exciting. It's actually quite difficult, like, to build up to speed, because it just rolls a little bit slower. It feels it's quite heavy. But then when you do get up to speed, it does deal with all the rough stuff super well.
Yeah.
I think. Like you've got a bit more travel on the suspension, which means it's a little bit softer off the top, and with the coil shock, it's very downhill, obviously, and that gives you that small bump busteriness. But where the old-fashioned feeling of it is the tyre compound.
Right.
That's the main
Just
thing.
grip then, pure grip.
Because it's quite slick today.
Yeah.
Like, it's not wet, and that makes it even harder because it's not predictable.
It's just damp in the woods, so isn't it?
And so I have to work hard to keep my speed,
Yeah.
which can be really rewarding and chunking through stuff. But it's a little bit on edge.
What I find the biggest difference is that it's the manoeuvrability in it. And what I mean, and the stability.
Okay.
So let me sort of elaborate. So
Yeah.
in terms of like manoeuvrability is, these big bikes, or bigger I should say, a lot roomier. You got a lot more room to manoeuvre yourself around the bike.
Okay, because of the longer reach.
Exactly, yeah. You've got more space within the bike to move about.
Yeah.
And it just, I find that means that when you're on the trail,
it's like more flicky. And
yeah, to a degree.
I mean, because it's the opposite, but then it allows
with bigger
you
wheels,
to do
right?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously,
cool.
the bike lends itself to you now. But I mean, following you on that, it looks quite scary, and it reminds me of exactly when I used to ride them as well. Because
it does. It puts me back in this place, especially because I've got the old school gear on, which is quite heavy and sweaty, and I'm the full face and everything. It does put me in a mindset of like feeling like a sketchy kid.
Yeah.
Like, which is weird. It does have a massive effect. Like the kit you put on, the bike you ride, where you're at, it puts you in this mindset of that type of riding. And then you ride like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's the same on an XC bike, or like if I feel really park and cool and I've got my flats on, like I do scrubs. And so now I feel like I should just be crashing.
Yeah. God, well, please don't.
The only thing I will say is I think because of the 26-inch wheels, when I've ridden it on the blue, like the flow trails, it's fun. It feels like a BMX.
Yeah.
And I can actually, like, I'm pulling off the jumps and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's cool.
Yeah, you don't get that same playfulness on these kind of modern enduro bikes. Well, with that then, I think we should probably head back out onto some more trails. What do you reckon?
I think so. Yeah, let's get to it.
All right.
This section really highlighted the way you can flick the small wheels around and place the bike where you want. The shorter wheelbase means things come up fast, but you can move the bike as one rather than front to back.
Good. I mean, that downhill bike looks super capable, to be fair, but for its age, like deep navigation. Oh, the enduro bike's suffering a touch here. You can see that extra travel of Isaac's deep in up the rocks. Whereas here, my wheels are eating up the rocks. Oh.
In these fast, rough sections, the suspension works really well, but the 26 front wheel gets pushed offline easily, so you just have to concentrate super hard. The Enduro bike is rougher with harsher body hits, but the big wheels roll over the bumps and track better despite the bike being chucked around. So we put a few laps down now on both the bikes. I know what I think, but the question is, did you miss it today? Knowing what you do about them, just doing an uplift on this, did you think, oh, I wish I had triple clamps?
No, I'll be honest, I don't. I actually don't. I mean, watching you ride down on this was funny because I'm not on it.
Okay,
so
harsh words.
No, in a sense like that, you were going well on it, but I don't wish I was clattering my way down on that. I mean, sometimes there were parts of the trail where I think, oh yeah, cool, that sort of extra travel of a downhill bike does look like it would be helpful. There were a few moments it got wild. but just sort of, you know, the stability, the suspension, how it works, you know,
just kind of like carrying your speed a bit more and like popping out, but you're not getting bogged on it so much. Yeah, on that vicious
valley track, especially towards the top where you're like popping little doubles and rollers and pinging between the trees and stuff. You're like, this thing's an absolute gem. Having said that, when it did get steeper and we were hitting like that quite tech trail with the big drops to flat and stuff, I was like, oof. Why would you do that? Why would you make a drop to flat? My bike's not liking this. And, you know, we got a metal versus carbon bike here as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So there's that, you know, I'm not worried anything's going to happen to it, but you worry even less with that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's been the thing for me, like, just really enjoying trucking through stuff. Like, and it's, even if the bike isn't too different, it puts you in a different mindset of like, because I've got the full face on, I'm like, yeah, I'm downhill today.
Yeah.
And you can kind of, I'm going to say get away with stuff, but you have to a little bit, and you just sort of steer with the rear.
Yes,
you know, and it is rewarding that, like, actually leaning into riding downhill sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've actually really enjoyed that. It is a novelty for me, obviously, so there's that factor.
Yeah, true.
But I think, obviously, you can't have all the bikes you want, but if, like, it is actually a pretty affordable thing to try and build up. Like, if you are doing, like, uplift days and that kind of thing, I've actually had a lot of fun. Like, I would love to get better on this bike.
I feel like it's like a get out of jail free card as well, right? So it's kind of like point and go, and then that's all you got to worry about.
And that's cool, because that actually then does elevate your riding, because it allows you to explore that send, and then you can dial it in and not die.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Touch Boris.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, what would you choose? Old school downhill bike, modern enduro bike? Which would be your flavour of fancy? Let us know in the comments down below. Until next time, if you want to see any more comparisons with myself and Isaac, do let us know as well down there, right, buddy?
That's it. You know what to do.
And well, we'll see you next time, right? See ya. Cross-country bikes have changed to beyond almost recognition in recent years.
But how much better are the new bikes? And have we lost a little bit of magic along the way?
We're going to find out, but first, a brief history lesson. The XC bike, the world's most popular mountain bike, would you believe, was built to be light, stiff and fast. It needed to climb like a rocket and descend like a granny. No, that's not fair. XC riding was just different 20 years ago. Bikes had 26-inch wheels, skinny 2.1-inch tyres, 2 or 3 by drivetrains, narrow bars, super long stems, and almost all were hardtails. In fact, it wasn't until 2008 that a full suspension bike topped a world championship podium. Specialised Epic ridden by Swiss ace Christoph Sauser. Then in 2011, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot and Jaroslav Kulhavy won World Cups on 29ers. But in the last few years, tech has accelerated even further. Meaning that this absolute weapon is now classed as an XC bike. Yes, dropper post, 29-inch wheels, 120mm of travel front and back, and a 1x drivetrain. And as you can see, I'm going to be joined by guest Cy Richardson from GCN. You may think of Cy as a skinny-tired enthusiast who loves nothing more than tarmac, oddly named coffees and counting watts. And you'd be right, but Cy also has some roots running pretty deep in the off-road world, even dipping into some racing back in the day. Cy, thank you for joining me, mate. Now, sadly, much like myself, I feel like you're old enough to remember these bikes back in their heyday, shall we say. So I thought you'd be the perfect candidate to help demonstrate to our viewers at home just what they're like to ride.
Yeah, well, these bikes, their heyday was my heyday. It's 15 years since my last XC World Championships. And so, yeah, this bike is frankly futuristic compared to what I was racing on.
Futuristic might be a bit of a stretch, I think. So let's talk challenges. First up for you, bud, I've got a black run challenge because XC's come a long way and it's pretty technical now, mate, from your time.
Apparently XC is more technical now, Rich. We'll see about that.
All right, well, let's check it out and see if our vintage bike and our vintage rider here are going to survive.
Easy, Tiger. Rich, before we drop in.
Yep.
Drop in. That's what you say, right?
Yeah, gnarly.
Cool, yeah. Can I just point out a slight flaw in this test, right?
Go on.
You are riding an Orbea Oiz top-of-the-range mountain bike, dripping with the finest components known to humanity.
It's all right, yeah?
The bike that you've got for me, you picked up on eBay for a couple of £100, right? And even when it was new, it wasn't that good.
Oh.
So it's not exactly a fair test. However, I will grant you, this is illustrative of a vintage mountain bike. So that is actually pretty much
like the bike that I raced back in 2007, albeit with the stems way too short, the bars are way too wide, the fork's got 40mm too much travel, and it's not got a front derailleur.
Mate, I've given you an absolute weapon of a bike there. I'm expecting big things from those old school skills of yours. Come on.
Shall I go first then?
Yeah, I would love to follow. That'd be hilarious.
Okay, mate.
What are we doing?
Mountain biking! Yeah!
That's it, Si. Oh, dear Lord above. Oh my Lord! That'll do me. See you, mate.
Oh, God.
Oh! Si, keep up if you can.
Come on. Come on.
Oh. I reckon Si's gonna like these conditions. It's battle my through and through. I hear some splashing. I don't know where Si is, but I think that's him. Hold on, Si. Hold on. Easy, Tiger. Easy. Right. This bit gets pretty wild now, so I think it's something that's worth you having a look at because it's pretty indicative of what you're going to find on modern day XC races and rides.
Okay, all right, let me scope it out then.
You go check it out. I'm going to talk to our guys and girls at home about the modern day bikes.
How long have you been here for, by the way?
Hours. Hours. I've had a brew. Okay, people, so while Si goes and checks out the incredibly technical section we're about to hit next, I wanted to talk to you about the bikes. Now, modern day bikes are vastly different from their retro counterparts in many different ways. Not just the fact that I'm on a full sus 120mm of travel front and rear compared to that 120mm travel, which actually is a little bit much bike that's size riding. I've also got the bigger wheels. I've got the dropper post, wider and better compounded tyres as well. It isn't all components and size of parts on bikes that have changed as well. No, it's actually their geometry as well. So they've undergone the longer, lower, slacker treatment, which is normally found all the time in your downhill and enduro world. Well, XC bikes have been given that same stretching, if you like, with head angles getting slacker, reaches getting longer, and handlebars getting wider. Gone are those days of 600 and God knows whatever bars that Si used to use, which would be good for, well, just poking something really. They're so narrow. No, now you've got proper, sturdy, controlled XC bikes, which are capable of so much more than they used to be able to.
So, there's some nice numbers there, Rich. What does that actually mean?
Okay, Si, well, back in the day, imagine your short little bikes that you're riding. You constantly found yourself pitched over the front, very difficult to move your body around. Well, these longer reach bikes mean that you're more centered within them. So actually that gives you the ability to move yourself about on the bike. As tracks have progressed and evolved over the years, the slacker head angle gives you a much more stability and control on the bike.
Well, I can get down this, mate. I found a line.
Okay.
It's not the chicken route.
I'll be the judge. All the way, son. How was it?
It's like downhill trials, isn't it? You just got to like pick your line really slowly.
Yeah. Completely.
Yeah.
Good run, good run. Right, let's wait for Si. Hopefully we'll be down not too far behind. I did have to stop now and again. The old boy, but a hell of a good black run that. It's a good test. I like it. You know, real challenging, and the weather, here he is.
Woo! Mountain biking!
Should we high five?
Yeah! That's what you do, right?
That is what you do. How was that? So that's a black run done and dusted. I'd say on the top end of how hard things can be, but certainly something that this bike is more than capable of doing. How was it on that?
Well, it was fun. Let's not be around the bush.
Okay.
It was really good fun, but it's fun in a different way to riding a modern mountain bike, isn't it? Because you're kind of getting down it more than you're going fast, if you see what I mean. And it does feel sketchy, like it's nervous, that seat up.
But we obviously need to go and have a cup of tea because it's cold and we need to dry out a little bit before this afternoon we do our XC loop, because I think it's only fair that we put these through a proper XC loop, and we're obviously going to swap bikes for a comparison as well.
Yeah, we are.
So I'm intrigued. Well, I've got a fair idea of what this is going to be like. I think you're going to have your mind blown when you ride this thing.
Yeah, I cannot wait, actually.
So how about we go dry, warm, get back out. All right, let's do it.
It still rains like it did in 2007, that's for sure. Okay, Rich, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, one timed XC lap coming up.
Okay.
Shall I do some bleeps? That's kind of how we roll on GCN.
Okay, let's do it.
Do you know about the bleeps?
I've heard of them.
Okay. Beep, 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 beep.
Mountain biking!
There you go, he's getting the hang of it. Now, I'm going to give Rich a little bit of a head start because I don't want to show him up. But whilst we wait, one thing, right? So I'm really looking forward to this lap, particularly the climb. And I know what you're thinking, blooming roadie, lights going up hills. But no, I think old school mountain bikes were brilliant at climbing. And I know the new ones are too, but the older ones felt fast. And that is a fundamental difference between these two bikes. Anyway, enough yabbering. My turn next. Beep, 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 beep. Mountain biking! Yeah!
This is where the full sus, I think it's going to come into its own. Real bumpy and that added traction. I love a fire road! So that's my lap on the modern bike done. Let's wait for size, swap bikes and head out again.
Oh my God. I survived. Bike survived. That's about all I can say. I was mildly terrified. Okay.
Right, so the bikes are swapped.
Yes.
So we've done our first runs on our own bikes, we'll call them. So it's time for second rounds.
Okay, you be careful on that one, Rich, because
I'm scared.
It takes a certain degree of skill, I find, to get the best out of a...
You going to give me the beeps?
I'll give you the beeps,
Go
mate.
on, give me the beeps.
Beep, 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 beep. That's a false start. Quite a lot of controls on this bike that I've never used before. But anyway, no excuses. I'm fully locked out. I'm ready to roll. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, like a... there we go. Oh, there we go.
This thing is incredibly uncomfortable. Not the way forward.
Horrendously uncomfortable. That was one of the wildest rides I think I've had in a long time. Look, Si's not going to be long behind because he's on the rocket ship that is my bike, so we're going to wait to reveal times until he's here. I think let's get out the rain. See ya!
Oh my goodness me. Have I drawn the short straw all day? Rich, I'm just going to do another lap, mate. See him at the calf.
Si, we're done. We're thawed out, dried off, relatively clean.
Yeah, I still got mud in my ears.
Heck of a ride. What did you think of both of the bikes? I'm intrigued to see your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I absolutely loved that Orbea particularly. I'm so glad that's the one I finished on because I had a huge grin. It was amazing, and the contrast between the two was really stark. But I've got to say, when I first jumped on your vintage bike, it was still cool. Like, it felt all right. It felt kind of fast and nimble and agile. It was only that my expectation was to be able to go that much quicker downhill that I found that I was terrified most of the time. Having my seat up again, forgotten about that, like pitched really far forward, forgotten that again. And actually, when you were talking about the geometry earlier, I was a bit like, yeah, whatever, geometry. But for real, I mean, geometry, and I'm including the wheel size in that too, right?
Yeah.
But that's a huge
and components, because obviously you're getting the seat out of the way with the dropper.
Yeah, exactly.
Monster. And obviously we can't compare bike to bike in this video. That'd be off our chops because they're completely different eras, they're completely different types of bikes, but they are sort of indicative of the eras that they came from. So that's what we're comparing, is the eras, if you like, isn't it? And I agree, I haven't ridden a bike like our old bike in 10 plus years, thank God. And I jumped on it and I thought I was going to die. I thought I was an absolute dead man going downhill.
Yeah.
So when I got back on my Ois, I was like loving it. It was amazing. But obviously we need to quantify how we got on here.
Yeah.
So let's talk some numbers, because we did time our little XC lap and we timed the downhill segment in it.
Can I just say, I'm absolutely petrified of you going faster than me with you on the vintage bike and me on the Ois. We just have to delete the video. It wouldn't be
No.
Come on.
So my lap times were, I was 38 seconds slower over the lap on the vintage bike.
Yeah.
The downhill portion of that on the vintage was a 1 minute 13.
Yeah.
And on the Ois was a 1:06. What did you do it on?
Okay, so I'm so relieved. So I did 1:15 on the vintage bike.
Okay, so a couple seconds slower.
And 1:06, exactly
so the same time.
On
amazing.
The Ois, yeah. And I was 26 seconds faster over on the Ois. But I think what's shocked me most actually is that most of my time was saved going uphill, and of course the uphill part was longer.
Yeah.
So proportionally it might not be as much, but it was the fact that it was simply that much quicker going uphill.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's insane how much difference. I mean, it's so that, for reference, the full sus is 2 kilos lighter than the hardtail.
Yeah, so that's a big factor. For sure.
So you're saving 2 kilograms straight away there.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Mine's slightly blown. I mean, yeah, it really is. The thing I can't quite escape is the fact that that vintage bike felt nice and agile and nimble, because it kind of felt like a gravel bike.
Oh.
And actually, I think that's why mountain bikes have moved on and left this gap for bikes of that ilk, and it's been filled with gravel bikes.
Wow.
Is that am I allowed to say that?
Well, I was just going to say, you said the G word on here.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I tell you what, let us know what you thought in the comments down below. Si, you did good to survive the day.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for taking me out.
Over the bars and that kit that you were wearing, I'm not sure what all that was about. But...
No. We didn't start very well, did it, when I ended up in the bushes and you overtook me?
Yeah, like
but,
fourth
you know,
corner.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, would you like to see Si or any of the other GCN lot on the channel some more? I think I would, because it was a fun day, mate.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you'd have me back, I'll do it. I'll drop everything and ride mountain bikes again.
Not my always, no way. All right, look, thanks for watching, everybody. Let us know what you thought in the comments down below, but we're out of it. We'll catch you next time.
30 years is an awful long time in the world of mountain bike development. So let's take a look at one of the first ever mass-produced downhill bikes to see just how far we've come. The modern downhill bike is a super capable race-bred machine. I've said it before, I'll say it again, it is a thing of beauty. But let's whip back over 30 years, back up the family tree to find its original ancestor. The Velici from 1992. Now this was really early days in the world of downhill mountain biking. Actually, the first ever downhill world champs took place just 2 years earlier in 1990. And this was the first ever mass-produced full suspension downhill bike. It says Saracen on the top tube, it says Syntesi on the swing arm. I shall explain. All right, so this bike is from around 1992-93, and that was when downhill racers were deciding what bikes they needed. And actually, that was around the same time that I started mountain biking, a bit later than that, 1995. And I used to buy all the magazines. I was completely bitten by the bug. And if my paper round money could afford it, I'd also buy Mountain Bike Action from America. I remember seeing a quote from American racer Kim Sonnier saying that full suspension bikes were the future of downhill, and I was gutted, a little bit heartbroken, because I couldn't afford a full suspension bike at that time. And this was really the start of downhill racers saying, we need these. It's hard to believe that actually they were trying to decide between their hardtails and full suspension bikes. When you look at our 200mm plus travel bikes now, they thought they could still be a little bit faster on a hardtail. The old downhill tracks of the early 1990s were a mix of fast fire roads and single track. There was a World Cup series and you had Norba races in the USA, and races like the Kamikaze that were just flat out down Mammoth Mountain on the ski slopes and fire roads. So this bike was designed by Marzocchi, an Italian company. I'm sure you're still aware that to this day still make suspension forks and shocks. And it was actually built by another Italian company, Velici, who are known for their motorsport manufacturing. And this was basically to test out Marzocchi's new suspension. The story goes that in 1992, the legendary BMX and downhill racer Dave Cullinan tried out the Velici full suspension bike and decided he needed it. But at the time, he rode for Iron Horse, who only made a hardtail. So the calls went out and they branded one up as an Iron Horse. Dave went on to be the 1992 US National and World Champion. The story that goes down in mountain biking folklore, where Dave was the only person to jump a wooden bridge at the bottom of that Bromont course, and he took that win. Making the Iron Horse FS, that was quickly renamed the Iron Horse Bromont, the world's fastest bike. But of course, it was actually a Velici, but it wasn't long before other riders decided they needed in on the game as well. Which meant that we had Velicis branded up as Iron Horse, Kona, Syntesi, Saracen, like this one. I'm sure there are others I can't remember as well, but this bike is actually from Team Saracen Cause, an early British team with some pretty legendary riders on there that I actually grew up with and have friends with. I don't know whose bike this is, but I'm guessing it might be Rob Warner's. It's quite big. But they had Rob, they had Steve Peat, Andrew Titley, Helen Mortimer, Kerry Basin, Ian Collins, probably more than that as well. And yes, they were sponsored by a beer company. And if you know anything about British mountain bike history, and you know those names, you know that having all of those people in the same place with added beer is probably a bad idea. So let's take a look at this bike. It's crazy just comparing the two, old and new, just how kind of spindly and small the components look on this bike. It's ridiculous, except for the pedals, which are Odyssey triple trap flats, or bear traps as we call them. Those were pretty legendary pedals and very expensive back in the day. Let's take a look at the shock. It's actually, again, Marzocchi. It's got 1 inch of stroke, which translates to 2.5 inches of travel at the rear. Back in the day, everything was measured in inches. Up front, we've got a 1.75 inch of travel on the Marzocchi XC400 fork. In modern numbers, that equates to about 66 millimeters of rear travel, 44 up front. This is a TIG welded aluminium frame with a high pivot swing arm on there, although it doesn't have an idler wheel on there, so you'll see some of the disadvantages to that already. When I sit on it, I felt it, pretty crazy. It's also recommended that you set this bike up with 0 sag, so that feels pretty odd as well. And as soon as you touch that rear brake, it pretty much locks up that rear suspension. When you compare the bikes side by side, you can see some massive differences in geometry over the last 30 years. For example, let's take a look at the reach. That's 415 on the old bike versus 465 on the new. A stem of 130mm, 45mm on the new bike. Head angles, 71 and 63. Seat angles, 73 and 66. The old bars are 620mm wide, whilst the new ones are 760. And the old bike is 14.5 kilograms, whereas the new downhill bike is only 16.5 kilograms, but almost twice the size. Got some more retro names on the components, some that are still around today. We've got Ritchie, Toyoga, Magura brakes in that sort of famous bright yellow. Hydraulic brakes up front, the cantilever hydraulics actually work quite well in the dry. It's had an upgrade to a disc brake on the rear, floating one, made by a company called Sachs, which I don't think is still around in the bike world. I think they make sort of automotive clutches, things like that. But it's got that rear floating disc, but also Sachs derailleur and kind of this internal 2-speed hub, which I know nothing about, to be honest, but quite interesting. It's got a single chainring up front and that 2-speed rear hub. Interesting on the front brake, you've kind of got these braces, kind of a bit of bodge almost, that sit inside the crown, because these are so powerful. If you pull them really hard, it would actually flex the bosses on the fork and on the rear of the bike as well. So that stops that from happening. It's kind of make your brake work a little bit better. 26-inch wheels, of course. This is way before we started arguing about all that stuff. Radially laced on the front wheel. I don't know why that would be. It's not as strong as crossing the spokes. And Onza tyres, 1.9. I can't remember what this tread is called. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure someone will out there. I've dug through the archives and I found how Dave set up this bike for his 1992 World Champs. He had 635mm wide bars, a short 120mm stem, because he likes being behind the bike. He had a triple chainring and he had 42 PSI in the front tyre, 44 in the rear, which gives you an idea just how bad the tyres and the suspension were back in the early 90s. How do you even compare it to modern bikes? Look at the size of like the tyre compared to that one. Massive brakes, carbon fibre, 200mm of really plush suspension, a triple clamp fork for extra stiffness, 200mm of travel, direct mount stems. Just crazy good how a modern downhill bike is for riding downhill. It's really hard to compare these things, but anyway, I'm going to leave my dream bike alone just for now, and I'm going to ride the old bike to actually see what it's like. Okay, this is a downhill bike, so I'm going to do a downhill run on it, but I've got to get up to the top first. I have been pushing a lot of it, but initial impressions, I am sort of surprised by how good some things are. I'm shocked by how bad other things are. Geometry feels crazy. How do you race down on this? Like it's more slammed at the front than my cross-country bike. It's got tyres that are about the same size as my gravel bike, so I'm scared. I'm feeling a bit apprehensive. And also the pedal kickback on this thing is insane. Look at my foot when the suspension goes in. When I stand up and crank this thing, it almost feels like you've got an oval chainring or something weird. It does this weird thing. I don't know how it's going to feel going down the hill. This Sachs 2-speed rear hub is crazy good. Why did we ever go to front max when this thing existed back in the 90s? It's actually really good. That's about it so far. I'm kind of worried about riding this thing downhill. I know these forks, I used to have a set a bit like this, and those bolts broke if you over tighten them. So I've given this bike a very thorough check over. It's been really well looked after, I've got to say. Whoever this bike was is really good, but the fork is crazy hard. It's leaking oil. I don't have a disc brake, so it's not the end of the world, but it's not great. And it feels very kind of weak and spindly, this bike, so I'm gonna go steady down the hill, but so far, you know, I'm not reassured with confidence riding this bike up the hill. Right, I'm doing one run and one run only, because my nerves can't take it anymore. Dare I do any jumps on it? Well, Dave Cullinan did, so I probably should. Am I ready? Oh my gosh. Oh. Whoa! I've got some issues with the shock already. And I'm not doing any jumps. Fair play to Dave Cullinan. Doesn't sound so good. Kind of metal on metal. There's a lot of oil down here. Where's that oil coming from? It says 200 PSI on the side of it. Does that mean maximum? I feel like I'm 150. These old seals can't be trusted. God, get out, man. I don't know what is the worst. Like, there's the metal on metal clunking, which I'm not exactly sure. I think it's the fork. There's a lot of oil appearing to that. It's not feeling good, I've got to say. Also, the fact that I'm running the flat pedals and I don't know what the suspension's doing. So trying to pedal over the bumps, like I'm scared my feet are just going to fly off. I'm trying to avoid the bumps. It's horrible. I don't know what is the least sort of bad thing. I guess the brakes do kind of work, but everything else, it's a no from me, dog. Nick, I think I've had enough, dude. Are there any like blue or even green downhill tracks we can get to the cafe? Maybe I'll push. I survived, just about, and the bike mostly did. There's a lot of oil coming out of the fork. I was a bit worried, as you might have guessed. It actually felt better there, like kind of where I've got way more grips hard pack. It felt all right. I could get weight onto the front wheel easy in those turns with that stem. It felt okay, but it was nothing like Mammoth Mountain, all those old Norba races. On the technical stuff, this thing, just the geometry is crazy. I don't know how they ever did it, and like you look at what you can do on a modern downhill bike, even free ride and that sort of stuff. It's crazy how far we've come in 30 plus years, but there you go, that's mountain biking. It's hard to know actually what to point to when you're comparing the new bikes to old ones. You know, what is it? It's kind of a bit of everything. The geometry's so much better, the components are way more capable, everything's bigger and actually stronger and better, but for hardly any weight penalty at all over the old bike. So let me know if you like the nostalgia and the retro bikes, and if you were racing downhill in the 90s. Get involved in the comments down below. Thanks for inviting us along, Hans. This pretty crazy collection of GT bikes, must be over 20 in this room. There's a lot of memorabilia which you're on as well.
Amazing stuff. Like if you as closer you look, as more you discover.
So this for me feels like, you know, when I started riding in the mid-90s, kind of the golden era of GTs. But how did you end up hearing about this?
Well, you know, the collection belongs to Justin, whose house it is, and Clive, they're best mates. And Clive reached out to me, and he was an avid rider back in the early 90s. You know, they would read MB UK magazine and became GT fans. And then he had a really nasty accident. I mean, he almost died. A car ran into them, and then he was still laying on the street. Another car ran over him. They ridden him off, and then after a year in the hospital, 2 years, you know, of recovery, he came back and rode, but he had a lot of hardship. But then their passion for bikes never went away, and they started collecting them. And I mean, this is an unbelievable collection of some really original, beautiful pieces and a lot of history.
Probably a lot of memories for you as well, I guess, for me as well. But these really early bikes with the amazing 90s paint jobs. Of course, we've got Zaskars. You would have ridden Zaskars a lot over the years.
I mean, that was the one that looked similar to this, except I had RockShox, but I had the spin wheels and this frame. I still have that bike in my garage, and that was a classic one, for example, yeah.
I remember for me, this is one of the sort of dream bikes of my youth, especially with the spin wheels. But over here, we've got some more modern bikes as well, but there's a Team RTS, which was the top spec full suspension bike the GT did at the time.
And that was the RTS was the first full suspension bike that actually worked. You know, like all the other bikes at the time were pogo sticks. And then this, I mean, a funny story, this RTS right here, it's built like Julie Furtado's and actually stamped in the frame, Julie. So I think that was her spare frame at one point. But she's the only person ever to win a cross-country world championship and a downhill world championship. And she showed up, and at last minute she said, okay, I want to do the downhill race. Missy and those guys were already celebrating at the bottom. She was one of the last riders. She came down, had the fastest time, and the bike had just come out. Jim Busby, who designed it, was over the moon. But
yeah, that's great. I didn't know that. Obviously, Julie Furtado was a world-famous cross-country racer. I had no idea she'd done that. We've got some RockShox Judies. We've got all sorts of retro stuff. Bonza Porcupine grips. And actually over here we've got some, what were they, Mag 21s?
Yeah.
Some SL ties, some titanium bikes. Obviously I used to call these Zizangs, apparently this is Shizang.
Shizang, I call them Shizang, yeah.
So titanium frame, two with disc drive on the back of that. But these are so early, some of these early bikes are U-brakes on the back, aren't they, as well?
I know, look at these, how tiny those roads. I mean, back in the days, the first suspension forks had like 60 to 80 mil travel. And forks came a long way, and I mean, look, there's a rock ring. That's what people used to put to protect their chain rings from locks.
Yeah, I guess you would have ridden one of those quite a lot for your trials and stuff.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a load of memorabilia as well. So I don't recognise these really early, I suppose. Kind of that's that Trialsy top with the
No, those are Karate. That was a UK distributor at the time, and they did their own clothing line. I think it was easier or cheaper. So, you know, even with this one, this was all the early GT days.
But these I remember. So that's the Steve Peat, Fan Morel, Nicholas Villiers era. There's a BMX top. I remember probably Dale
That's
Holmes.
a BMX top. Yeah, Holmes would be what raced for us in those days. Look at a golden frame here. This was a special promotion. GT did this thing. It was almost like a privateer thing because whoever was the best privateer at some race would win this golden bike, and then they got to race it in the next race, and in the next race they would get on full-on pit support from GT and all that. And they had like a few hardtails and a few full suspension ones, but I think there was not more than 20 ever made of these golden bikes.
So I've got some of these jerseys that Steve Peat gave to me back in the day when he was helping me out, but there's been some big names riding for Team GT over the years. Obviously you've been there for a long time, but who else have you seen come and go in the GT years?
Yeah, I've been there now 37 years. Yeah, there's a lot of cool names. I mean, when I first started with GT in '87, that's when they really got serious with their mountain bikes. And the first guy they hired was like Rishi Graywall, who was a cross-country racer, and me. And we started basically Team GT, and then over the years we had all kinds of guys from Cullinan to Lopes to PD to Nicholas Vouillot. Julie Furtado was the greatest cross-country racer of the 90s. And there was like Alison Dunlop and like Carter and Martin Mays later, the Athertons. I mean, almost everybody on the World Cup circuit, I think, has a little GT story to one degree or another. You know, some of them wrote them in their early days and some professionally.
I remember just in Europe they used to have a big truck and the support they have for the riders there, but there's a little bit of memorabilia up there. There's the US semi truck up there. You can just picture how that would be.
Let me show you that real quick. Hang on, this is pretty cool. Oh, I can't, but I'm gonna move this stem so you can maybe film it. We had a semi rig that was equal to the Supercross semi rigs nowadays, and this we talking like early mid 90s. I mean, the golden era of mountain biking. We had a stack team with like top riders. Like,
it's crazy. I was chatting to Steve Peat about it, about his big first deal. But at the time, I think they still had Nico and maybe Fabian Burrell, and I can't remember exactly, but there was like 5 hitters just on the downhill team.
Mike King.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and like Cully and myself. Jimmy Kite was a slalom XS, and then Jimmy Killen, he was a junior. Chantal Ducour.
So we've nipped outside to get ourselves a bit more space, take a look at a couple of my favourite bikes. The Zascar Ellie, obviously this is aluminium frame, anodised in this beautiful bluey colour. Obviously not all of this is sort of from the age, it's got some more modern bits on like tyres, because this is a bike that Justin rides, but it's an amazing looking bike. Some of the names obviously got the spin wheels, so a lovely XTR. Original groups actually, well, rear mech and shifters and levers that still feel absolutely pristine now. Some answer parts, so the ATAC stem and the Manitou 3 forks. So if I remember correctly, these were elastomer forks that in British summertime worked nicely, but in winter they got so hard they would all freeze up and wouldn't work so well. Brake bosses on all these bikes as well, so if anyone remembers these cantilevers, they could work okay in the dry, but you had to pull them so hard, it would actually it would move, it would flex the frame, the bosses. So you needed these brake boosters to stop them from flexing and give you a bit more brake. Over to probably my bike from this era. So this is GT RTS, but not anyone. This is the top spec team RTS, and I love the graphics on that. Again, lots of XTR stuff. DCD, Dave's chain device. So that was a Mr. Crud product you might know from Crud Catchers to basically stop your chain whacking around and coming off your chainring on the bumps. So this is the first full suspension bike that GT did. It's got a no lean shock on there. Check out sort of how thin that sort of goes through the frame there. And a Judy SL fork up front. After this came the LTS, and then I think we were into the Lobo, and then the iDrive came after those. So the first of many full suspension bikes for GT. So Hans, you've got a few bikes at the back of your van you're taking around on your tour. Tell us about some of them. We've got a really old trials bike, 20 inch?
Yeah, this was from back in 82. This German company made these bikes. They were made in Italy. Rigid triple crown fork and the skid blade and the 3-speed hubs, the drum brake in the front. Motorcycle brake levers, look at those levers.
It's huge.
Yeah, so that bike I rode in 82, 83, and then, and then this right here is the very first bike that GT built me. Gary Turner himself, GT Gary Turner, he built that bike, and that was the first trials bike, and then after that we made the production bike, the Ricochet, which had then the BMX bottom bracket with the Power Series cranks and all that, but still a triple crown fork. And the skid blade, which is missing on this one.
Well, then you're up to your... From this, you're going up to 26-inch bikes, got some couple of Zascars.
Yeah, this is one of my classic Zascar frames. Not my very first one, but one of the early ones where a lot of the pictures, like the famous wall ride pictures or the snow pictures, were taken. I also won a Trials World Cup on this very frame bike. And then, like, fast forward, people had always said, Hans, you must have broken so many bikes. And the truth was, I had never broken any.
It's surprising because 90s mountain bikes, generally, if you rode downhill or jumped or did anything much, they would crack eventually.
I was probably not riding them hard enough. But this one broke because I drove my car over it, literally. So that's that story. And I've been telling that story in my talk tour.
What about this? We're moving on a few years, but full suspension. What was this called?
IT1. The GT IT1 was a gearbox with an internal transmission, which is not in this bike right now. Full suspension, the shock is obviously missing, but I had the full bike like this and it got nicked, but then I have now a frame still. Omar gave me this frame and one of these days I need to build it up, but it was kind of a futuristic bike and people still think gearbox bike will maybe one day.
I mean, people have talked about it for a long time now, to be fair, but still you've got that sort of top tube that comes out the back with the GT on there. Still a lot of really obvious GT touches.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, that's a few of my things that I dug out of the garage for today.
Thank you very much to Justin and Clive for inviting us, and Hans, of course, for inviting us to check out some of this amazing stuff. I'm sure there's some mountain bikers of a certain age, like myself, who are watching this, got very excited, overly excited about some stickers and some logos they haven't seen in a long time. So super cool, and I guess I should pick one to take home, and it's got to be a Zascar, hasn't it?